Robert.
Yeah, a question I've been thinking about and never asked before because it seems like it's for far off in the future. And the faster things move, the more new tech that's coming out, especially in AI, but really everywhere. The more I'm thinking this could come up in the next 5 or 10 years. I used to be a subscriber to the Rush Limbaugh show, and
Oh,
man, he was good at what he did until Trump came along and ruined him. Kind of
yep.
like a lot of people that Trump ruined. But one of the worst arguments he would make, and he's not alone in this, about environmentalism, and in particular climate change, global warming, is the idea that his argument was, well, it's hubris, it's self-aggrandizement for human beings to think that we could destroy a planet that God created. And I bristled against that for the obvious religious reasons, but I also thought, no, we can create atomic weapons that can create massive destruction. We may not be there yet, but we could eventually destroy the planet if we wanted to. We really could do that. Maybe not now, but in 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
We could do it
And
now. I mean, there's enough atom bombs out there that we could destroy the planet. I mean,
yeah,
just the Russians could destroy the planet by themselves. They have what 2,000 nuclear weapons, a few on each continent, spread around to maximally increase radiation. I mean, sure, there's an algorithm that'll solve that problem, how to destroy a planet with X number of atomic bombs. We have hydrogen bombs that are like 1,000 times stronger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, yeah, so I think it's already doable. Um,
well, the reason I thought of that
yeah,
is specifically in regard to climate change. We've got, crazy people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens talking about cloud seeding, which we do, and it has some impact in improving rain where there's drought.
yeah, and they're
And
not
they're
talking about
going
cloud seeding. They're talking about
weather
manipulating the weather.
modification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is more than cloud seeding. Yeah.
So I thought, well, but give them 5 years, give them 10 years, we may advance to the point where
Hope
we
so.
could improve things in northern climates or southern climates or anywhere away from the
I
equator where
hope
things are
so.
just too damn cold.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, wait a minute. If it's possible to raise the global temperature several degrees, and that would mean people in equatorial countries would either have to buy air conditioning or if they're too poor, they just have to suffer.
Yeah.
Um, can we possibly have the right to make that change and impose our improvement at the expense of everybody, again, around the equator who would suffer more? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, you'd have to really be thoughtful about it, right? I mean, if it was clearly going to be negative consequences from what you're doing to your neighbor, right? Then your neighbor does have a claim against you. If you're doing something that is destructive to their property in one way or another, um, then they could have a claim against you. So if you're changing the weather in a way that is potentially destructive to somebody, uh, you know, uh, uh, somewhere, it's something that I mean, it needs to be thought through in terms of what that destruction looks like. Is there a way to compensate them for that? Is it worth compensating for that? I mean, that's the best way to do it would be for those people who are going to benefit from this to pay off the people who are going to be hurt by it, buy them the air conditioning or whatever it happens to be. Um, so yeah, I mean, you'd have to think about what are the consequences and how to rectify whatever problems are being created. Of course, it happens now, right? I mean, this is the problem with climate change. So let's assume climate change is real, and the fact that we use CO2, methane, or whatever is actually warming the planet. Um, and clearly, China and the United States emit a big chunk of that CO2 more than anybody else. And people in Africa are not emitting CO2 yet. God, they're gonna, supposedly. Now, the way climate change works is, I think the further away you get from the equator, the more radical the changes in the temperature is going to be. So it's actually in the equator you don't get a lot of changes, and you get changes at the edges. That's my understanding. This is why the poles are supposed to be where the melting stuff is going to happen. Um, but let's say they suffer, then how do you deal with that on an international scale? It's a challenge because how do you even measure these things? How do you exactly evaluate them? Um, do you stop progress because somebody somewhere can claim that they're suffering from it? Can they sue? If they sue, what courts would they sue in? There are no international courts in which they can, I mean, there are no international courts that are credible for this. Could they sue in U.S. court? Could a group of Africans sue American industry for doing this? Now, if it's a company, let's say there's a company out there figures out a way to divert hurricanes, which would be nice, right? So that the hurricanes all spin out into the Atlantic and none of them ever hit Earth, or they dissipate the hurricanes. The hurricanes just they lower the speed of the wind. You throw a chemical into the eye of the hurricane, and that just slows it down. It diminishes it. Um, and let's say the consequence of that are, I don't know, because of that, more hurricanes now hit Bermuda, or not hurricanes, but more rain hits Bermuda. Somebody gets flooded because before the hurricanes would go one way and now they're going another way. Um, then you could argue that the people who got flooded could sue the company that did it, right? And in a court wherever that country was, and they would be eligible for some kind of recompense because they did suffer property damage because of what was going on. Now, the fact that other people benefited more, or and they, I don't think that's they suffer damage, so they need to be compensated for it in some way. I don't know. It's an interesting question. And yeah, we should be able to control the weather in a decade or so. And hopefully we can stop hurricanes and change patterns of wet rains and maybe warm it up where it's cold. But it would be bad if by warming up where it's cold, we're also warming up where it's hot. That would not be a good solution. And there has to be some mechanism by which that gets, uh, you know, uh, um, arbitrated, and maybe the courts could come up with maybe there's a system within the law that could arbitrate such claims. You'd have to think that through.
Aaron, I appreciate that. That's my belief is that it is going to be complicated. A lot of the principles that you need for this are in Ayn Rand's essay on the New Left and anti technology. But yeah, I think it's going to be complicated, and some of us, out here in the rank and file, are a little too quick to give answers that say, well, screw those people. We're pro tech, and therefore we can do anything.
Well, I
I
think
get
that
it.
I think that a lot of these problems are solved by property rights. Part of the problem, part of what creates complexity is when governments do these things, and then there's a lot less accountability. I mean, people think government is more accountable, government is less accountable. So there's a
Right.
lot less accountability for these things. But if people have property rights, then you can actually see the damage being caused by particular actions and by particular actors, and then find ways to reimburse for the damage. The challenge is when you have governments who shield all of that. And yeah, the answer can't be to stop technology. The answer can't be to shut technology down. But there has to be thought given, particularly when it comes to weather issues that affect. It's the same with air pollution. You have to think
But
through
you're on. There's
air pollution.
always effects. Like the problem is the effects. There's always excuses to shut down or throttle these technologies that they come up with. And some of them is legitimate. I get it. A lot of it is illegitimate.
Yeah, but that's not what Robert's asking. Robert's asking in the case where it's legitimate. In the case where it's illegitimate, we all agree. And we all agree, I think, that in most cases it's illegitimate. But the question is, given the progress of technology, given our ability to be able to manipulate these things, could you imagine a situation where it is legitimate, where there is a situation where you're doing something that it badly affects creates harms to other people?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I think, yes. And you
Yes.
have to build a
Yeah.
legal system, and you have to build legal remedies to be able to arbitrate that and to be able to solve that.
Yeah, and if I could just wrap up, because you've given me a great answer and a long answer already, but I think it's really important that we are the ones who offer the full answer with all the nuance and complexity, and not be the ones who say, well, if you're anti-technology, I don't want to deal with you. I mean, if they're really anti-technology, I don't want to deal with
Yeah, I
them,
mean, if they're
but
really anti-technology, you don't want to deal with them. But yes, I think, and this is the sense in which you really do need really do need philosophers of law. We need people to figure these things out. And it goes back to Adam's question. We need people to figure out the right answers about patents and how they should be properly, thoughtfully done, and be able to identify if there are abuses of the system, or things that are bad in the system. And you'd expect any system that we put together to have to evolve over time. And one of the great tragedies of our irrational era and of our irrational politics is that we're not seeing that evolution, right? So right now, I know Congress is trying to deal with crypto, which is completely appropriate for them to be doing. I mean, the crypto needs a legal framework, but given how pathetic our politicians are and given the kind of advice they're probably getting, I doubt that they'll do a very good job of it. So if we were going to reform the patent system right now, my guess is it would be worse after the fact than if we tried right now, or if we try to come up with any kind of legal framework to think about dealing with weather stuff, it's going to be crummy, right? Because whatever politicians come up with now is going to be much more likely to stop technology than it is to actually solve the problem. And it's not an easy problem to solve if uh, if there are legitimate issues. And I think it's quite possible there will be legitimate issues. And how do you do it without stopping technology? Because you can't stop technology. So how do you do it? I mean, it's possible that in circumstances you're going to have to say, just like Ayn Rand said with regard to like coal pollution in the 19th century, um, just live with it. There's no alternative until we get rich enough to be able to deal with it. We're just not rich enough to deal with it. Then it could be that is the answer. But you have to think it through, and you have to figure out, in this case, is that the best answer that we have? It could be that we say to develop undeveloped countries, yeah, I mean, you have left yourselves exposed to the weather because you've chosen to be statist and undeveloped. This is the consequence, develop quickly, get rich, and then you'll be able to deal with these things. That could be the answer. I mean,
yeah, or at least part of the answer. Yeah, I think that we need
particularly
to
with
be the
regard to
ones with the
Africa,
complex answers.
yeah,
Yeah,
Latin America.
sometimes we have the principles, and the principles seem simple, and so some of us end up thinking, well, then the answers are simple too, and they're not always simple. But I
They're not
appreciate
always
that.
simple.
Thank you.
It's not always obvious what the answer is going to be.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to be hopping off since I've taken a bunch of time, and I've got to get ready for our objectivist get together tonight. Jennifer will be there, and I'm sure she will want me to say hi ahead of time. So thank you for that, and thanks for
Say
the
hi
long
to
answer. I
Jennifer,
really
although she's
appreciate it.
here, so I can say hi to Jennifer directly. But
Oh, excellent.
there you go.
Excellent. Thanks, Yaron. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
Yep. Bye.